What a treat you're in for this week. It's the greatest movie of the 1980s, and that is Ghostbusters. Directed by Ivan Reitman, written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, starring Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, and Ernie Hudson. This is one of my favourite films growing up. I would watch it time and time again. We've been wanting to do a big film for a while, and I don't think it gets much bigger for this. So for our 25th anniversary, here we are. It's Ghostbusters. Another film from that amazing year that was 1984. Check it out. So many good films came out that year. The film is almost 40 years old, so we delve into a couple of key areas that we always ask. Our favourite aspects, what are our memories of it growing up, what's our favourite scene, what changes would we make, and then finally, would we recommend it? Based on this intro alone, I'm sure you can probably work out what our thoughts of the film are. But anyway, here's the episode. I hope you enjoy. So guys, for whatever reason, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma, I believe everything happens for a reason, and I believe we were destined to start Rewind the Movies and revisit Ghostbusters.
Oh,
I was after an intro.
Did you practice that?
I wrote that literally as the scene was on when I was rewatching the movie, and changed the ending. But it was Evan's pick, but it would have come round to me at some point, or Prog, to pick this film.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, exactly. The only reason I hadn't chose it earlier was I wanted to do it justice. And I think if we'd done it as one of our first episodes where we were still trying to find our feet, and there's an argument that we're still trying to find our feet now, I was a little bit nervous about doing it then. It's one of my favourite films. And if you ever put me on the spot and say, what is your favourite film? I'd probably really panic, hesitate, and eventually come to this anyway. So yeah, it's right up there for me. I'll come into my memories for a moment, but have you picked it? Come on, what's your initial thought?
I know in a previous podcast, the Spaceballs episode, I said that was one of the greatest films ever made, but don't shake your head, Prog, because you know it's right. But this is cinematic perfection for me. This hour and 49 minutes is just bliss from start to finish. And I remember this was the first film I ever remember watching properly. The first time I had exposure to it, I remember I think I was about 4 or 5. And I remember it was around Christmas time, and we were staying in my auntie's house in Whitley Bay up north. And I say auntie, but it was my grandma's best friend, auntie you borrow an orbital sander from. I came downstairs because I was sleeping at the time. I came downstairs and I walked in right at the point where the apartment building blows up at the end. And I thought, oh my God, what's happened here? It's amazing. And then when a mate of mine, his mum used to run a video store called Azad Video Store in North Shields. People who've actually seen Trainspotting, the film, that company Azad is the chain where Tommy takes his so-called sex video back to the shop. Anyway,
is he really?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Have a look next time you watch Trainspotting. It's the scene where Tommy and Lizzie are waiting outside the video shop, and it's Azad Video. Yeah. And I remember every week I used to get Ghostbusters, and it used to be out all the time because it was a popular film. But my mate's mum knew I loved it, and she kept a special copy underneath the counter just for me.
How many times do you think you rented it?
Well, once a week for probably about 2 years.
Jesus, what?
I think my mum and dad got sick of it at one point, but I wouldn't rent anything else. Literally, it had to be a film and Ghostbusters, regardless of what it was. Yeah.
Did they eventually buy it for you?
No. I had to wait. I think. Actually, yes, they did. Sorry, I tell a lie. I was about 8 or 9, and it came out on VHS, and it was the two of them at the same time. So it was Ghostbusters 1 and 2 on the same tape. And in between, I think I mentioned this before in a previous episode. There was an episode of 1930s Batman just one random episode. And there was 2 trailers, both films by John G. Avildsen, one of which was The Karate Kid 3 with Bad Boy Mike Barnes, and another film called The Bear.
I remember that double cassette or double VHS because my cousin had it.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
he had the exact, well, not your copy, but he had a copy of it. I remember because I remember the trailers in between the films.
Yeah.
Good times. Well, I owned it on VHS, and I can't remember from what age, and I can't remember the first time I ever watched it. All I know is probably very similar to you, Ev. I watched it on a regular basis. And again, I say this all the time, but we didn't have loads of VHSs and videotapes growing up. You had stuff that you recorded from TV, and you had a handful of probably original VHS, which this was one of. So you would just watch the same films over and over. And that is why we grow to love these films. And I'm pretty sure I would have loved this watching it for the first time. It's right up there for me. Funny enough, when you're talking about Ghostbusters 2, I had Ghostbusters 2 on LP. That's how old we are. Admittedly, it's probably towards the end of LPs, but my sister won it in a competition, so it must have been around 1989 when the second film came out. She won it in a competition from a magazine, and obviously gave it to me. But there,
it's got some bangers on that soundtrack.
Oh, it has. I wish we still had that now. It's but there's another film that I'm keen to do at some point in the future. Number 2. It's that's quite special to me as well. But again,
wasn't Bobby Brown was like
he's on that one, yeah. He's in the film as well, isn't he?
Oh, that's right. He's the restaurant guy, isn't he?
No. Bobby Brown he greets the Ghostbusters as they go in to meet the mayor again.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
I have another story with Ghostbusters, but I think it's only right that we ask Prog first his memories of it, and then we'll discuss my other story because it does involve Prog as well.
Yeah. You might want me to tell it because you probably forget stuff.
Yeah, you got a shocking memory. Well, I tell you what, we'll start off with me telling it and see if it's right or not. But go on, Prog. What's your memories of it growing up?
I don't remember a lot of the film from when I was younger. I remember watching it, but I couldn't tell you what scenes I remember or moments I remember. I know I had a lot of Ghostbusters merchandise. Like I had the figures. I remember having the.
You had a Proton pack, if I remember rightly.
I was just going to say about the Proton.
Oh my god!
But from the real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it was the cartoony
one,
and
we come on to that in a moment. Yeah. But I was really envious that you had a Proton pack, and I'm assuming it would have come with a trap as well.
I can't remember the trap. I just remember running around the house with a Proton.
You're envious. I'm envious now.
I had a trap, but it was like a voice changer. So in theory, you would slide out the trap, and I had the other end, and I could talk in it, and it would be a loudspeaker, but you would change the pitch and things, and you could like turn yourself into a ghost. And I remember the advert for it, that it was literally like someone would slide it underneath a chair, talk on it, and like pretend to be a ghost, and someone would be scared. And then as a, I don't know, 7, 8, 9-year-old boy, I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I want one of them. But yeah, I was really envious of Prog having a Proton pack.
Yeah, I love that Proton pack. Probably, I can't remember how long it lasted. Knowing us as kids, it's probably like 6 months or something. But I do remember having it and wearing it a bit. But again, it was the culture, wasn't it? It was the Ghostbusters culture that I think I was not besotted, but that's what took my interest more than anything.
I think we benefit from growing up in a time, right, where there was really good cartoons in the sense of they captured your imaginations. For me, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, He-Man, Thundercats, and the real Ghostbusters, who had to change their names because of the other Ghostbusters cartoon at the time, the film Nation one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had all the figures. I had Ecto-1. I had the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I was really envious of my cousin who had the fire station. And I couldn't wait at times to go around his house and play with it. I was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, so there is a story which Prog obviously knows. Ev, you may know this, and it's to do with university. And
I know where you're going now.
yeah, so I watched, let's put it straight out there, I watched Ghostbusters 3 times in a 24-hour period.
It was less than that, but
well,
it was about 14 hours.
I don't think it was that much, but anyway. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was the day of my birthday, the 5th of June.
You're right with that.
Yeah. It was, I want to say a Saturday, but I could be wrong on that.
No, you're correct.
And it was my first year of university, technically Prog's second year of university. So we lived in a house in Pontypridd because we went to the University of Glamorgan. Evan, we knew you then, but you didn't live with us at that point. And we watched Ghostbusters before a night out. I'm not sure. Let me finish my story and then correct me what bit's wrong.
Okay,
I think it was a night out. Wales were playing Poland that day in football.
It was a big game for me.
Yeah, Prog with his divided loyalties. I thought we watched it before we went out. I then had a little bit too much to drink. And as we were getting ready to go out, I had a shower. And then about 5 minutes later, Prog found me on my bed saying, "Come on, Andy, you going out?" And I was just, I'm just going to have 5 minutes. And fell asleep on my bed. And they just went, he's not coming out. He's wasted. To which point, I then woke up early hours of the morning, maybe not early hours, maybe 11, 12 o'clock at night, naked in the spare bedroom. Went downstairs, put Ghostbusters on because it was on in the video recorder. The boys all came home early hours of the morning after going to a party. Ghostbusters just finished and we ended up watching it again then because you saw the end of it. How much of that story is factual, Prog?
Do you know what? You haven't done too badly. I'd say about 50% of that is correct.
50.
That's very good for you.
Right, so number one, it was your birthday. It was a Saturday. Wales versus Poland were playing. It was me, you, Chris Isaacs, and Stephen Bondy, who lived with us at the time. We did a punch. And if you remember the punches we used to do, they were absolutely lethal.
eight alcohol pops and a 2-litre bottle of white lightning or
and some
strong
vodka.
cider. Yeah.
And,
we might have done Skittle vodka that day as well.
It was Skittle vodka, yes, you're right. And what happened was we were drinking there, watching the football, having a laugh, listening to a bit of music. And then we all started getting ready to go out. And our aim was to go out about 7 o'clock and go to the student union for the night. So we were all ready. Andrew was the last one to have a shower. And then about 25 minutes, half an hour after we thought he'd come out the shower, there was no sign of him. So I went I knocked on his bedroom door. I opened the door. I went like that. And the curtains had been drawn. The quilt was over his head. Are you coming out? No, but I'm fucked.
I think at one point I might have said, I'll catch you up later or something.
Oh, you did, yeah. No, you did say I'll try and catch you up later. So me, Bondy, and Isaacs went out. Bondy ended up getting lucky with a girl, so he went back to hers. Isaacs ended up in the hospital to have his stomach pumped. I came home to find Andrew sitting in the living room, finishing watching Ghostbusters for the first time. And because I hadn't seen Ghostbusters for a while, he sat in the living room while we watched it again. While I was watching it, we ended up sleeping in the living room. One of us on the settee and one of us in one of the chairs. And then when we got up in the morning, it was about 8:30, we'd had a phone call from Isaacs from hospital to tell us where he is so we wouldn't worry. In all honesty, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but as you are when you're a young lad, you kind of forget about it. But he was in hospital after having his stomach pumped and his parents were there with him. So he was okay at that point. But after the phone call, we ended up watching Ghostbusters again. So that's the third time that Andrew watched it, and it was the second time I watched it.
I wasn't too far off then.
No, you weren't far off. No.
So in the level of importance, Isaacs came a distant second to Ghostbusters.
Well, you got to remember the state that we were all in. I mean, I do quite well when I'm drunk. I kind of am aware of where I am, so I manage to get home most of the time. But you're coming off that punch, and you're also drinking when you're out. So Andrew's obviously just groggy because he's woken up after a little sleep. I don't know if you were still drunk, were you? Probably.
No, there's another part to this story, right? So this would have been 2001, right?
Yeah, summer, yeah.
So I'm assuming, we had mobile phones at that point. I'm pretty sure I had a phone call from you, Prog, that says, we're going to a house party. Do you want to come?
No, you're mixing up a different night.
A different night.
Yeah, because I don't know if you remember, this is turning into university stories now, but the first house we lived in uni, we had a landline because mobile phones had only just come out and they were really expensive.
Yeah.
And me and you, before we had the landline, the first couple of weeks that we were living in the house, we used to have to go down to the phone box down the hill to either ring our parents or ring our girlfriends who we were seeing at the time to speak to them. Do you remember that?
I remember going to the phone boxes, yeah.
Yeah.
There's listeners now thinking, phone boxes, where the hell are they?
I know, yeah.
All right, enough university stories. You can get a flavour of what we were like in university from that. But for me, that's quite a memorable night and a memorable story in the sense of...
It's the best birthday you've ever had, isn't it?
Well, exactly. Remember the time when we watched Ghostbusters?
Imagine how delighted he would have been if he had the proton pack as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'd woken up naked on my bed with a proton pack.
Well, this is the same house that Andrew went out the back and let off the fire extinguisher. In inverted commas, to test that it was working.
That was good house. Bad house, good house.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Right, where do we go from there? Any other memories? Or should we just jump straight in on our favourite aspect of the film?
Let's go. Let's get into it.
Yeah, Ev, I know you've made some notes. Let's start. What's your favourite aspect?
Ev, I know you're going to reel however many off you, so I'm going to limit you to 3. You can have your main one.
All right, then.
And then you can have 2... mentions, honorable mentions.
All right. The main one for me is how well it combines the comedy factor, but with a serious agenda, so to speak. And I know like with the actors that they had, with Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, they had, I don't know, were films like Stripes out before this or after? Yeah. So you had their reputation of being like comedic actors like Saturday Night Live and all the Canadian version and stuff like that. All through the film, you don't think it's like a comedy or a slapstick. I mean, to me anyway, it's a serious film with comedic elements, and I think it's really good, and it shows that they could play serious roles.
Yeah, what you're referring to is the fact that I think Harold Ramis and Ivan Reitman, they'd been involved in the comedy films they were involved in, was like National Lampoons and Caddyshack and so on. So even though they are comedy films, they're completely different types of comedy.
Yeah. Where I think it's quite like a a sort of semi-serious film, but with the comedic elements all rolled in. I think it's really good. Some of the special effects I find still sort of hold up. I mean, I watched it last night, and that, like the scene where Stave Puft comes round in between the tower blocks, and it's got the shot of the crossroads and whatever. I think that as an effect was really good for the time.
Yeah, I think you're right with the effects still holding up for the most part, and I think it's helped by the effects are for ghosts. So the ghosts are going to look, you need them to look otherworldly. So, you're not going to have practical ghosts, practical effects for ghosts. You so
No, I think that apart from like a couple of ghosts, like the taxi driver, you know how you can see is sort of like or like an animatronic sort of thing, and obviously the dogs. Yeah,
I will admit that when I watched it last night, the dogs did look a little bit dated, but
yeah,
I 100% agree with you. The rest of that film looks, it does it really well. Even from the moment that you see a ghost for the first time, and you see a ghost quite early on. It's not like a lot of it's hidden, or it's, how would you describe this film? Is it a horror comedy, an action horror comedy, an action comedy?
I don't think it's a horror at all. I'm not saying that I would dispute anyone who would class it as part horror, comedy horror perhaps, but I don't find any of the elements in it scary or frightening. I think there's only one scene that I thought, yeah, that could be in a horror film.
Is it the first one when they meet the librarian?
No, because there's too much comedy in it.
I don't think so. When it turns around and it just goes rah. Admittedly, the bits either side of it are quite comedic.
No, but the build up to it is, to me, there's too much comedy. The one scene I think is horror is when Sigourney Weaver is held in the chair by the ghostly arms and she's dragged into the kitchen. I think that is a horror scene.
Yeah. Are you thinking, and with the librarian scene, are you thinking right before the titles, before we even meet any of the Ghostbusters, or are you?
No, when the Ghostbusters meet the ghost,
right, okay.
And she goes, shh.
Yeah.
And then Ray's plan is get her.
Yeah.
I think for me, last one, I think the soundtrack is brilliant for this. So the song choices in this film fits the scenes really well, and even the score, the creepy music, like, and that's in the scene how when Sigourney Weaver's in the chair, you know, it's quite suspenseful, and the song when the containment system blows up, and then obviously you see all the ghosts go out into the city. The song behind that, Magic, I think it's called.
Magic,
yeah.
Please. Brilliant. The other one I love in that is Saving the Day. I don't know if it's called that.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Saving the Day. Proper 80s montage in the middle of a film. I love it.
I think that's B3. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll shut up now.
Brog, do you want to go next?
I'll give one an honourable mention, but my main one is, and I will say, anytime I watch this film, my favourite aspect of the film changes all the time. So for this viewing, I picked out something different, and I think it's something that you two wouldn't perhaps mention. Yeah, so that's another reason why I'm going to say it. But the main one is the script. I think the script is brilliant, and I'm guessing that there was some sort of ad-libbing by Bill Murray, because, you know, I get the impression that that's the type of actor he is in comedies. But as far as I'm aware, the plot structure and a lot of the dialogue in the film is as it was written by Aykroyd and Ramis. And as I understand it, the plot points and the story is mainly by Aykroyd, and the dialogue and character beats are mainly by Ramis.
I always thought that Ramis ad-libbed. I always thought that he ad-libbed more than he may have done, because for the one conversation when they first go into the library, and then Bill Murray says to him, "Oh, this reminds me of the time you tried to drill a hole through your head," and immediately he comes with, "Oh, that would have worked if you hadn't stopped us." And
yeah, maybe that's an ad-lib, but I do think Ramis he's capable of having written that previously anyway.
Yeah,
because I mean, it's turned out in films past Ghostbusters, particularly with Groundhog Day, that he's obviously a very talented scriptwriter for comedy. But the script is the main one. But for this viewing, my favourite aspect was Harold Ramis as Egon and the relationship with Janine. And I just found that funnier this time than I found it previously. I'm not sure whether it was because I was, you know, I was trying to be more aware of what was happening, and I took particular notice of it. But I did find their interaction really funny. And it made me sad about Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, because she gets with
Rick Moranis. And Rick Moranis is an absolute doofus.
Sally.
Yeah. And I really enjoy Ghostbusters 2, right? I really enjoy it. I think it's a good film. And I think there's a lot of good things in it. But I don't think what they built up in this film between Egon and Janine is paid off in Ghostbusters 2. But I think Egon is funnier than a lot of people give him credit for as a character.
Yeah, and I don't think he has as much screen time as Bill Murray, for example, or Dan Aykroyd. But yeah, what he does have is brilliant. And I'll jump on that bandwagon a little bit, because there's one scene with him and Janine, so Egon and Janine, and she asks him a question, and for the love of money, I can't remember what it is. Maybe it's something like, do you believe in God or something? And he answers it and more or less says no, but then she just keeps on talking as if he'd said yes.
Yeah.
I don't think it's religion. I think it's something else she asks him.
It says, do you read a lot? And he said,
read, that's it.
Yeah, he says, do you read a lot? And he says,
print is dead.
Yeah, the printer's dead. And he's like, and she's like, oh, that's fascinating. I read a lot myself.
Yeah, she goes on about what she does. And she goes, do you have any hobbies? And this is my favourite line in the film. I collect spores, moles, and fungus.
Yeah.
And there's that other bit where he's fixing the computer. So she's talking on the phone or talking to someone, I can't remember. And then he just comes up from underneath the computer.
That's the same scene.
Yeah. As if she was like, he must have been really cramped under there, because she looked like she was under the desk. Anyway.
But I what I like about their interplay is, obviously, Ray and Peter are the driving force of the film. Yeah. They're the two, you could say, even though they're supposed to be three main characters, they are the two main characters that we're centered on. But I think the relationship between Egon and Janine allows us the opportunity to get to know Egon a lot more than we would have done if she wasn't in there. Because you can see the bouncing off each other.
Yeah. There's an interesting a deleted scene or outtakes, I can't really remember, but you know the TV advert, we're ready to believe you.
Yeah.
So there's deleted scenes of that, which there's a longer commercial, and it's Ray, I believe, talking more about what they do and what they can do for you, but there's Janine in the background. She's just standing there. And she's just not doing anything. It's just like, we need an employee to stand in the background or whatever. She's just standing there. But if you get a chance to look at the outtakes or the deleted scenes, that one's a really good one, because the film itself did evolve over time as Aykroyd was writing it, and they ended up doing a couple of commercials where they all three of them come together and they go, Ghostbusters. They also go Ghost Smashers, and the other one then is Ghost Stoppers and Ghost Blasters are the two that are on the.
Because they couldn't get the rights for the name originally, could they?
So they ended up having to pay. I can't remember what it was.
$500,000.
But I can't. It was to Universal. That's what it was. So Universal, I think, owned Film Nation or Film, whatever they call it, Filmatronic or whatever, and they had a live TV action show called The Ghostbusters, but Ghostbusters was two words. And the guy who brought in this film, Ghostbusters, was then moving to Universal, so he ended up sweetening the deal, and that's why they were able to use the name. I can't remember his name for love nor money, but Frank Price. Sorry, I just found in my notes. But going on what Prog said about Egon and Ray is my favorite aspect of the film. I find him hilarious, right? So for all of Venkman's quips and dialogue and brilliantly delivered scenes, Ray does a lot without saying much, I think, at times, right? So first of all, you more or less meet them for the first time when he runs into the office, let's call it that, wherever Venkman is doing the experiment. Disregards everything that Venkman is doing, even though what he's trying to do is hit on a girl. That's an aspect that I'm sure we'll pick up at some point. And then we go into the library, and it's just the little things that he does. And the first bit that he says that makes me laugh out loud every time, he goes, "Listen, do you smell that?"
Yeah.
And what the film does really well at that point is they put in a couple of piano notes, and he goes, "Listen, do you smell that?" Ding-ling-ling. And it works so well, and it's only like really this time that I picked up on it. I always known it was there, but it just sets the scene as such. I've mentioned it already. I have a plan. Get her, brilliant. And then there's two aspects, right, of Ray's running, and I'll come to the cigarette as well. But Ray's running. Watch him. So when he runs out of the library, he runs like a cartoon character. His top half of his body wants to go one way, his legs go the other way. So they run down the steps. His body wants to keep going forward. His legs turn left or right, whichever way it is. And yeah, he does this like sort of like cartoon try to turn a corner scenario.
He's almost like hopping, isn't he, to try and turn? Yeah.
And I tell you the other aspect. They have their first call. So Janine hits the alarm. We've got one. Ray gets up. They're having their last sort of Chinese or whatever. He comes down the pole, goes to run one way, but ends up doing this like really like exaggerated turn around to get to the equipment or their clothes, let's put it that way, in the lockers behind.
Yeah.
And it's just loads of those little things that Dan Aykroyd does throughout. When they're in the fire station for the first time, seeing it and deciding whether they're gonna, get it or not. Egon lists out this massive list of things that are wrong with it, and then next minute, hey, does this pole still work? Comes down the pole. Oh, this place is great. When can we move in? He's again, just makes me laugh every time. Absolutely brilliant.
There's one thing I didn't realize as well. Like when he's working on the car, when Dana first comes into the fire station, and he's working on the car, and he pops his head out, and he's smoking. That right next to the car engine.
Throughout the film, Ev, they're supposed to be professionals. They're in other people's like houses and places of work, and they're just smoking away. I know it's different time and everything, right? But also, on the fire station, that pole, I would not come down that. See how wobbly it is. It's like someone's just holding it on up the top end, and they are. Also, I'm sure Prog will know this story. I went to New York for my honeymoon, really excited. Went and did a bit of so I said to Rach, what I'd love to do is go and see some of the places where I know some of my favorite films have been filmed or shot. So we went to the library and we stood outside the steps. I think we went to the place where they do the call it fate, call it luck, call it karma speech.
The university.
The university, yeah. So then we went down to sort of south of the island as such, looking for the fire station. And me and Rich, and the fire station is in, I think it's Hook and Ladder number 8 in Tribeca. I think that's how you say it. And I had it on Google Maps, and we were on the street and we were going back and forth. And I spent about 20 minutes looking for this the fire station, expecting it to be this massive building, absolutely huge. And anyway, couldn't find it, to eventually find out that it was behind scaffolding. And I was like so excited to get my photograph outside, Rachel on the other side of the street, me like, yay, come on, take my photo. And I couldn't have it because it was behind scaffolding. I was absolutely gutted. Anyway, I'm not going to even go into my other aspects because I'm sure we'll pick them up at some point. But Ray is right up there for making the film with me. And I think it shows that Dan Aykroyd, as a writer for the actual film itself, it was his original script. It makes it, and his original script, I don't know if you know the details behind this, but it was supposed to be set in the future, and it was supposed to be a lot darker. It was originally going to have him, John Belushi, and Eddie Murphy as the main protagonists, right? It was set around dozens of Ghostbuster groups fighting these ghosts over different times and different dimensions. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was going to be in it, but he was much earlier in the film rather than being the, let's call it, the boss, if I was going to use a gaming term, right? And ultimately, what he had written was them fighting something like 50 large-scale monsters, and Ivan Reitman estimated that this film would have cost upwards of about £300 million to make. And bearing in mind now, this was 1984. Or probably, well, it was earlier than that. The other thing was that they had a very short period of time to shoot this film. They had literally 12 months from the moment they got the green light from the studio. They said, right, next summer, we want this film to be released. So they had literally 12 months to cast, to shoot, to edit, and do everything. Which, if you think about the final film that they've come with, and Prague will know the sort of what comes with every aspect of making a film, especially the end edit and things. I just think it's unbelievable what they managed to achieve in a 12-month period for the quality of film that was produced.
Yeah, definitely.
I gotta say, going back to what you were saying about the ads and the deleted scenes, that ad as it is in the film is the first bit of sort of viral marketing that I've heard of anyway. Is that the phone number that's on the ad was actually a real phone number, and if you phoned it, it went through to a voicemail message of them saying that we're out on a job, please leave a message or something. And I think within the first like day or so, they had thousands upon thousands of people phoning this number.
Can I just give you one anecdote?
Yeah,
go on.
Janine, when she's peeved off with Venkman because she hasn't had a break or day off, and she answers the phone and she says, "Ghostbusters, what do you want?" I still answer the phone like that to some of my family.
Ghostbusters, what do you want? Brilliant. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've probably said that a number of times in my life. And again, this film, there's hundreds of quotes in it.
Yeah.
And the one thing that Prog prompted me to do a moment ago, going back to Ray, is the scene where they meet what's now known as Slimer, but at the time he wasn't known as Slimer. And Ray turns around, sees Slimer for the first time, and the cigarette is just hanging on his lip. And that cigarette was supposed to fall.
Yeah.
And it just stayed there. And what a brilliant bit of filmmaking, I think.
I've quoted if I'm wrong here, but didn't they base Slimer off John Belushi in
John
Animal
Belushi
House?
was originally going to be in the film.
Yeah.
He died, I don't know how much before the film was made, but it wasn't that long. So Slimer was originally known as Onion Head for whatever reason, but he's based on the party and the gluttonous sort of characteristics of John Belushi. And Dan Aykroyd was supposedly very good friends with Belushi, and they did Blues Brothers together, didn't they? And I'm sure they did other films as well. But they wanted some sort of like homage to him, and that's where it came from. And I mentioned it just now. Slimer, the name, didn't come about until, and it was named by the audiences that went to see the film, but also then adopted for the real Ghostbusters and then Ghostbusters 2. He was before that known as the Green Ghost or Onion Head. I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I don't know where Onion Head came from. Yeah. And the voice to Slimer, do you know who it is? It's Reichman.
Really?
And he also does the voice when Dana turns into Zool and is lying on the bed, and Peter says to her, who am I talking to? Where can I speak to Dana? And he goes, "There is no Dana, only Zool." And that's Ivan again.
Oh.
So moving on to favourite scene. Prague, I'm going to come to you first.
For this time watching it, I'm going to pick the scene where they're in with the mayor
What a
defending
scene.
themselves.
It's right up there. It's one of mine as well.
We haven't spoken a lot about him, so I'm quite glad that I picked this scene this time, because I think it's a perfect example of Peter Venkman's character. He's, for want of a better word, a salesman, isn't he? He's
a game show host, according to
yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's got a gift of the gab, and I think this is a scene that typifies that approach and character perfectly. I mean, forget everything that he says prior, right? The last line before the mayor makes up his mind is perfect for this scene. And he says, Lenny, you could save the lives of millions of registered voters. He didn't need to say anything else. That's all the mayor heard. And that's what convinced him.
And it's sort of it justifies the point, because as soon as he says the line, it goes over to Mike, the cardinal or the priest or whatever, giving it the approving look, going, yes.
Lenny.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant scene. I got it as mine for a number of different reasons, right? The exchange between him and Walter Peck.
Yeah.
Is this right? Yes, sir. This man has no dick.
Yeah.
The bit with Winston Zeddemore, and I'll say now, I think Ernie Hudson does really well with what he has in the film. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, and he's a cracking actor, and he does really well. But when he delivers, more or less just a couple of lines, he's like, "Sir, I've only been with this company a couple of months, and blah blah blah. Seen shit that will turn you white," or something like that.
Yeah, that's such a good line.
It's brilliant. I tell you what, though, the scene before it is really good as well, in the jail.
Mm.
Yeah, that's another one I was thinking of picking, but on this occasion I went for the mayor's office.
Yeah, but both of them work really well together, and it's a brilliant scene. It's right up there for me. I will say, the guy who plays Walter Peck, what's his name? William Atherton.
William, yeah.
Yeah. He said for ages after the film, he used to get abuse from like general members of the public, just because of that role. And people would call him Pecker and things like that.
Oh God.
He nearly had an injury as well, didn't he? Because when obviously the apartment building blows up and the Stave Puff explodes, they dump all of that marshmallow on top of him, don't they?
Which is shaving foam.
Yeah, and apparently it really hurt him.
The story goes, they tested it out on a stunt guy first.
Yeah.
And they released too much. Supposedly it was like in 500-gallon batches they should do. So I don't know if that's a batch is what they put on this guy on, or whether there was a batch that can cover the entire scene. I don't really know. But anyway, yeah, the story goes that they dumped it on this stunt double, and they injured him because it was just far too much. So they ended up using less than on the actual actor himself.
That's what the stunt double's there for, I suppose.
Yeah. Exactly. I love that scene though. It's really short bit of the film, but like it's I think it's that sort of comeuppance, isn't it, for a character? You're like, he was a right cock earlier on in the film.
I like it as well because obviously the Ghostbusters are trying to, almost protest to the mayor about the severity of what they're facing, and even after everything they say, the mayor is still in two minds. Yeah. So Venkman just comes in with that one line, and it's just like, okay, we've got him now.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I've got a couple. So that was my main one as well, right? But I have got a couple of just honourable mentions. We don't need to go into them a huge amount. One of them's the Twinkie scene. Mm. Where Egon is, referring to what could happen as a massive Twinkie. And then, you see Ernie Hudson's character when Winston's going, tell him about the Twinkie. Love that. I love the introduction to Ecto-1 for the first time. So, and there's two different parts of it. So the first time you meet him, and Ray comes out of the car. So, and it hasn't been done up or anything, and he reels out everything that's wrong with it. It needs sharks, it needs this and this and this and this. And then the bit where it comes out of the fire station for the first time and goes around the corner, and you can clearly see that the film is sped up because it's going faster than that sort of junk would ever go, because it's a really heavy vehicle. And then it goes on to it goes on to the
Hotel.
Is it? The hotel. But there's I'm trying to think of the song.
Oh, it's called Cleaning Up the Town.
That's the one. Yeah. So yeah, just a couple of honourable mentions from me. Also, before we come on to your favourite scene, Ev, there's a really good documentary which is called Ecto 1. I think something like Resurrecting the Classic Car. So for the release of the Ghostbusters game, and I want to say around about 2008, 2009, I could be totally wrong on that. They found Ecto 1, the original, because there's only ever been one of them. And for years and years, so he was using number 2, and then for years it just went around during various tours and car shows, and so it ended up getting into hell of a state, because it just stayed in a lot somewhere and just degraded. And I think it's still owned by the film company, or the studio, sorry. So if you ever get a chance, watch that documentary. So what they do is they do up the car in time for the release of this game. And it's just a nice little homage, and you learn loads of things about it. That so yeah, there was only ever one car made for it. Dan Aykroyd was really keen that car was used, because in his mind, when he was writing the script, he had an old Cadillac ambulance as the car. But the problem was, the time you put the 4 characters in there and all the equipment around it, it becomes a really heavy car. And they were saying, well, like, during filming, it was treacherous. And that's why when they come out of the fire station for the first time, go and more or less do a U-bend and go down the road behind them, they have to do it so slow because the car's so heavy it can barely turn. And they were just really fearful of it breaking down throughout the entire film. So they got through the entire film and it was all right. And it broke down, I believe, then through midway through filming Ghostbusters 2.
I can't picture any other car as a Ghostbusters car.
Did you have the figures, the real Ghostbuster figures growing up, Ev?
Yeah.
Did you have the car?
Yeah, I had Ecto 1. I had all the Ghostbusters and their sort of corresponding ghosts, because I remember they all came with proton packs which you attached to the arm, and it had a little yellow string which.
Well, yeah, they had a different color for every character, didn't they? Yeah. And they would come with them with a ghost. Some of them would fit over their heads and things. Yeah. And yeah, they had Ecto 1, but if you remember, there was also Ecto 2, which was a little one-man helicopter.
Yeah, no, I didn't have that.
Yeah, I never had it, but again, I think someone had it within our group of friends. Come on then, Ev, what's your favourite scene?
Funny little thing about how you mentioned about the Twinkie, the little nods to like certain bits of the film I only picked up yesterday was that Venkman gives Egon a Twinkie right at the start of the film. So you almost think
it's a Twinkie, is it? And Egon, you deserve this.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a chocolate bar, but yeah, it makes more sense for it to be a Twinkie. I take it back what I said about you, Egon. Yeah. You deserve this.
A couple of honourable mentions before me main one. When they're in the hotel and they've just captured Slimer, and Venkman breaks out the checkbook. And he's writing how much it is, and you see Harold Ramis like scratching his face, but he's doing like a 4, and I didn't realize that until later in life. He's like, oh, it's 4,000, and then he's pointing his nose, so it's like 1,000.
In that scene, right, as Ray is initially talking to the hotel manager, you see Venkman pull out the pad, and him and Ramis exchange a look, and Venkman points to the pad.
Oh, okay.
So it's almost like they have a secret agreement before Venkman then goes on about the price.
Okay.
Yeah, I love little details like that in films.
Yeah. Yeah, I quite like the montage when they become successful, and you see like you see the famous sort of the famous American people, and they were, if you imagine, they like, to get people like Larry King and Casey Kasem on as like cameos in the film. That's
Well, it
quite
was
good going.
Larry King's first film appearance.
Yeah.
Really?
Also, Ron Jeremy. Did anyone spot him?
Yeah, he's in it. Yeah.
I don't know if he's supposed to be in it because he's obviously not credited, but he's just a guy in the street, isn't he?
He's the only famous person I recognise.
He's just in the background. Problem is he's got his clothes on, so no one recognised him.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that about Larry King. That was his first appearance because he didn't stop doing them after that.
The Ghostbusters opened the door for him. Also, do you know there's a TV reporter or a news reporter, and he's being interviewed, and there's a guy just standing in the background. Yeah. And I only found out this time round that that's a real member of the public. They were filming in the street, and they obviously didn't stop and have permits or anything. They just started filming, and it's just a random guy standing there, like stroking his neck. I'd love it if that was me. Yeah, I'm in Ghostbusters.
Well, I've never seen Ron Jeremy in the film.
It's fleeting, but it's
not. And also, unless we told you that's Ron Jeremy, and
you'll never
because
see
he's just like in the crowd.
Debbie Gibson's in the film as well, apparently.
Oh, is she?
Okay. Yeah, but it's her as a child, so she's not famous at that point. Yeah. So
my favorite scene, and like you, Prog, it changes every time I watch it. But when they choose the form of the Destructor, and basically they say empty head, and you see, and then Venkman goes, "Did you choose anyone? No. Did you? I didn't choose anyone." And it just turns, and you see Ray's facial expression, and he's just like, "Oh shit." He's fucked up. But then the reason why I like it is just the details of it, because as soon as he starts talking and explaining, you hear Stay Puft in the background, and you hear the footsteps, and the camera shot, especially how it's following, it's going through the buildings, and you see the Marshmallow Man just coming through, and then obviously it turns right. I just think fantastic.
What did you do, Ray? It just popped in there.
What? But I was going to say, this isn't a picking nit about the scene at all. I was just going to bring this up at the end because none of them, or all of them, depending on how you want to frame it, could have kept their mind blank forever.
Wow.
So I think, in a way, Ray's actually helped the situation because it's a giant marshmallow they've got to beat. Whereas one of the other ones could have thought of something 100 times worse. And also, you got to factor in whatever they think about is the enemy just going to turn into a giant version of that?
Yeah, they could think of an ant and it'd end up being a giant ant, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, can you imagine if they thought of a crocodile or something? Or they got in their head, King Kong or something, and it actually came to life. I mean, that would make so much more damage than a giant marshmallow.
Well, originally, what they wanted to do, to sort of show how big he was, they wanted him to emerge from the Hudson River, next to the Statue of Liberty, but they abandoned that idea because they just obviously couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, the logistics of that at the time would have been a nightmare.
They drop like hints of Stay Puft all through the film, don't they? Like there's like when Dana's eggs start cooking on the counter just before she sees the dogs in her fridge, she buys Stay Puft marshmallows, and then
is it a real brand, or was it the real brand when the film came out?
I don't know.
Because it's a brand now, isn't it? But I wasn't sure if that's on the back of the film or not. And obviously, it's an American brand, so we wouldn't have been that familiar with it.
The other sort of instance of Stay Puft in the film you see is when the containment unit explodes and you see all the lights and the ghosts like flying around the city. You see there's like a mural on a wall of the Marshmallow Man, and it's got big like Stay Puft in letters and stuff.
I don't think I've ever seen that bit. Before we go on to final changes for the film, I want to put on some mentions that I've got, right? And you may or may not be aware of these, but Michael Keaton and Chevy Chase were both linked to the part of Peter Venkman. And we always do this, and I'm not entirely sure I can see them. The problem is because Bill Murray does own that sort of part. He does it so well. John Candy was linked to Lewis Tully, but and quite, I think quite far down the line as well, but wanted to take the character in a slightly different way, so they ended up going with our friend Jason Jones, Dribbler.
Rick Moranis.
Yeah, Rick Moranis, that's the one. Know the scene where Ray has sex or has oral sex with a ghost in his dream?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know the deleted scene that's linked to this?
No.
So, and there's a scene, and it's been filmed because I've seen it. Ray and Winston go to like an army barracks or something along those lines, right? Because there is a soldier on the outside. And he opens a barrier and they go in. And they go into this building hunting ghosts. And they split up. And then you come back to Ray. And for whatever reason, he's fallen asleep on the bed. And in his dream, in the actual film that we watched, he has a dream. And if you notice, he's wearing like some weird things on his shoulders.
Yeah, it's like an old-fashioned army uniform.
Yeah, exactly. And it's literally, this is linked to this scene. Right, so this is why I think they've had this dream sequence in there. So anyway, for whatever reason, he falls asleep on this bed. There's a cupboard or a door by the bed, and it lights up, very similar to the room that Dana gets dragged into. Ray sort of wakes up, and the ghost of that woman comes out. The next scene then goes to Winston knocking on the door. Ray, are you in there? And he's like, and he shouts out like, "Leave me alone!" Or I'm busy, or something like that. So I, to be honest, I'm quite glad they didn't use that, and they used it as a dream rather than Ray having sex with an actual ghost.
So what you're saying here was a subplot where Ray was having some sort of paranormal affair.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's one of the deleted scenes that was released, I think, for the 35th year anniversary. Would that have been right? Yeah, 35th year anniversary. It's just interesting. Never seen it before until this week.
Did you have any idea watching it as a kid or a teenager what the ghost was doing?
Yeah,
definitely as a teenager, probably not as a kid. But yeah. But I always assumed she gave him a blowjob rather than...
Hang on a minute now, Anne. Your history on this podcast would dictate that you didn't have a lot of knowledge in that area. What was it about this particular scene that gave it away for you? Was it the cross eyes?
I'm not going there. Surely it's not Ray's sexual awakening.
Oh, I hope not. But then again, they're supposed to be from university, aren't they? I mean,
well, they are, but they're scientists who are like 30 years older.
Yeah, they're all doing master's degrees and stuff, and they and PhDs. So
Ray's had some time in industry. He tells it as it is.
He's worked in the private sector.
You think he's had some sort of carnal relations with a co-worker or something, is it?
All right, come on, changes. Ev, let's go to you first. What have you got?
None. Sorry, you're not getting anything at me there.
Hey, don't say sorry, mate. It's fine with me. Come on, Proggen. What have you got?
I don't have any changes. I've got some questions. First one, Dana. How much does she eat? Her fridge is stacked. And she's also just come back from grocery shopping, so she's got more food.
Can I just shout out, and we haven't mentioned already, I do think she does Dana very well, Sigourney Weaver.
Oh yeah, but in fairness, we haven't mentioned Bill Murray a lot.
Well, Bill Murray, Rick Moranis.
I mean, the cast are great as a whole, isn't it? So I think it's evident from what we've been talking about that, for the most part, we've tried to highlight things that you wouldn't normally speak about, or we try to do it.
But like you say about Sigourney Weaver, that's still another big name to get from the film. She did Alien.
Do you know that she auditioned by only barking as a dog?
What?
Yeah, supposedly. So as part of her audition, I think she had to reenact the scene where she becomes the dog. I think they were a bit reluctant to go with her because she was a big name and known for Alien at this point, but she wanted to do something different to show that as an actor, she wasn't just going to be pigeonholed.
Yeah, she done more serious work up until that point. I think the only comedy film she'd been in was Annie Hall, but that was only a bit part. But it turns out she's actually a really good comedy actress because she's actually in one of my favorite underrated films, which is Dave.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Galaxy Quest then.
Well, that's another good film.
I was thinking that as well, yeah.
She's a brilliant actress, Sigourney Weaver. She's been in so many good films. She's actually my favourite female performance in any film, and that's Aliens. I'm going to make sure we do that film. Lewis Tully.
Yeah.
Right? Is he just an annoying, nosy neighbour, or is he a possible stalker?
He loves a bit of Dana. He obviously would like to take her out on a date. Let's put it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know which way I'm landing, but I wanted to ask you guys first.
Bit nosy neighbour, bit lonely, bit fancies Dana, to be honest.
I think he fancies Dana, but I think ultimately he's just a nosy bugger.
Yeah.
Because if you notice when he's out holding that party, anytime someone comes to the party, he introduces those people at the party to everyone else, but tells them personal information, like how much they earn and how much they're worth and stuff.
Yeah, well, he says that line, doesn't he? He says, I invited only work colleagues or contacts and not friends because it's tax deductible or something like that. Right, bombshell here, right? Might be a bombshell, I don't know. I've got one change to the film.
Jesus.
And it's not the film, and it's a point that I've brought up earlier about soundtrack. It's the main theme. Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr. I don't like it. And do you know what I think it is? It's overplayed. Halloween parties, all that shit. I just don't understand it. I think, right, if it wasn't in the mainstream like it is and was just left as a film, a song to a very good film, I probably wouldn't have a problem with it.
I can see where you go in there, though, because there's so many songs from films that I can't handle, not because they're bad songs, but just because I've heard them so many times.
Nothing against Ray Parker Jr., nothing really against the song, but... It's just overplayed. It's played, I think, in situations where it shouldn't be played. Do you know the story behind it?
Yeah.
So Huey Lewis was approached to write the theme tune for the film. He declined because he had just written, what's it called? Back in Time for Back to the Future. And he didn't want to necessarily go down the route of writing more sound tracks for films and things like that. So look, let's end. I will say one last point. Budget of 25 to 30 million. Return 295. More or less times 10. Come on, don't get much bigger than that. And that's just box office. God knows what sort of rights and things were sold after that. The TV series, number 2. So anyway, let's wrap up there. It's one of our favorite films. I'm so glad we've done it. Probably a longer podcast than what we would normally do, but I think we had to pay some sort of homage to it. So
worthwhile.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers all. Catch up soon. I'm not going to do my usual intro. Ta-ra.
What about your outro?
Oh, it's not that's outro, is it?
Can you
back.
edit?
He's back.
Yes. Can you edit it with like a song from the film or something? Just fade out with, or fade in with Magic and fade out with Saving the Day. Oh.
Saving the Day.